My name is Annie. I'm 30 years old now, but the story I'm about to tell you started on a day that was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, and somehow became the most painful one. Graduation day. You know how people say family is everything. Yeah, I believed that too, at least back then. The sun was shining that morning like the world itself was celebrating with us. Students in black gowns, proud parents holding cameras, teachers smiling like they had just released hundreds of dreams into the world. Everywhere I looked, people were hugging their families. Except me. I kept checking my phone. 10:15 a.m. no message. 10:30 a.m. is still nothing. My graduation ceremony was about to start, but my parents weren't there. I told myself they were probably stuck in traffic. Maybe my mom forgot her phone. Maybe my dad was parking the car. I kept making excuses for them. Because sometimes, when you love people too much, you create lies just to protect your own heart. Then my phone buzzed. For a second, I felt relief wash over me. It was my mom. But the message wasn't what I expected. Sorry, darling, we can't come today. Your sister's party is happening. She really needs us. That was it. No congratulations. No apology. Just that. My sister had thrown a birthday party that same day, and somehow, that party mattered more than the biggest achievement of my life. I stood there in my graduation gown, surrounded by cheering families, holding my phone like it had just delivered a bullet straight through my chest. I remember whispering to myself, maybe it's not a big deal. Maybe I'm overreacting. But deep inside, I knew something had just broken. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet crack in the place where family is supposed to live. When my name was called on stage, I walked across like everyone else. People clapped, cameras flashed. The dean shook my hand, but when I looked into the crowd, there was no one there for me. No parents, no family, just empty seats. And in that moment, I realized something painful. Sometimes the people who should be proudest of you are the ones who care the least. That night, while my sister's party was filling our house with music and laughter, I sat alone in my tiny apartment with a cheap pizza and a silent phone. I made myself a promise that would change everything. I said one day, I'll build a life so big that even the people who ignored me won't be able to ignore me anymore. But here's the thing nobody tells you about success. Success isn't always about proving people wrong. Sometimes it's about surviving the moment they showed you exactly where you stand in their life. And that graduation day, that was the day I learned my place. But it was also the day I started building a future they would never expect. Because 6 years later, the same parents who skipped my graduation would be staring at something on Instagram that would make them text me words I had never heard from them before. Darling, we need to talk. And when I finally walked back into that house, I had a surprise waiting for them. A surprise that would change everything they thought they knew about their forgotten son. And trust me, they never saw it coming. The message from my mother sat on my phone screen like a ghost from a life I thought I had buried. Darling, we need to talk. We're waiting for you. Just one sentence, but it carried 20 years of silence inside it. I stared at it while sitting on the balcony of my penthouse, looking over the glowing skyline of Manhattan. Cars moved below like streams of light. Helicopters crossed the sky. The city was alive. And somehow, I felt strangely calm. Because the truth was, this moment had been coming for years. Not because they suddenly cared about me, but because they had finally seen what I had become without them. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. And memories started flooding in again. Not the glamorous kind, the painful ones. The last time my parents had really spoken to me before that text was 3 years earlier. The day of my college graduation. a day that was supposed to be one of the proudest days of my life. I remember standing outside the university auditorium in my black graduation gown, holding my cap in my hands. Families were everywhere. Parents hugging their kids, cameras flashing, mothers crying happy tears. My best friend Tyler nudged me and asked, "Your parents here yet?" I checked my phone. Still nothing. No message. No call. But I wasn't worried yet. My mom had promised the night before we wouldn't miss it for the world. Then my phone finally buzzed. I smiled immediately. But the smile faded the moment I opened the message. It was from my mom. "Sweetie, we won't make it today. Your sister's birthday party turned into a bigger event than expected. We're needed here." I read it 3 times, then a 4th, just to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding. My sister's birthday party. That's what they chose. Over my graduation, Tyler looked at my face and immediately knew something was wrong. "What happened?" I forced a smile. "Nothing. They're just running late." He didn't believe me, but he didn't push. Because sometimes your friends know the truth even when you try to hide it. I walked into the graduation ceremony alone. When they called my name, Annie Harper, I walked across the stage, shook the dean's hand, accepted my diploma, and the entire time my eyes kept scanning the crowd. Row after row of cheering families, but none of them were mine. That night, while everyone else celebrated with their parents, I celebrated with a $3 pizza slice and a bottle of cheap soda from a corner store. Sitting alone on a bench in Central Park, looking up at the skyline, and asking myself one question. If my own family doesn't believe in me, then who will? That was the night something inside me changed. Not in a dramatic movie way, no loud music, no inspirational speech, just a quiet decision. A promise I made to myself, if nobody was coming to save me, then I would build a life so big that nobody could ever ignore me again. And that's exactly what I did. The first 2 years after graduation were brutal. I worked 3 jobs. Morning, assistant at a marketing agency. Evening, food delivery driver. Night, freelance graphic design projects. Most days I slept 4 hours, sometimes less. But every dollar I earned had a purpose. Savings, investments, learning new skills, building connections, slowly, painfully, step by step. My life started moving forward. Then something unexpected happened. One of my freelance designs went viral online. A small startup loved my work. They hired me. Then another company noticed. Then another. Within 2 years, I wasn't freelancing anymore. I was running my own digital branding company. At first, it was just me and a laptop. But success spreads quickly when people underestimate you. Soon I had a team, clients, investors, and finally, enough money to buy the thing that made my parents suddenly remember I existed. The penthouse. When the real estate agent first showed it to me, I honestly thought she made a mistake. Floor-to-ceiling windows, 2 stories, a private rooftop garden, and the most breathtaking view of Manhattan I had ever seen. The price was insane, but when I looked at my bank account, I realized something shocking. I could actually afford it. The day I signed the papers, I didn't celebrate with champagne. I didn't throw a party. Instead, I took a single photo, standing in the living room, New York skyline glowing behind me. And I posted it on Instagram with one simple caption: "Hard work looks good from up here." I didn't tag anyone, didn't brag, didn't even mention the penthouse. But the internet noticed. Within hours, the post exploded. Likes, comments, shares, people congratulating me, old classmates reaching out, business contacts sending messages. And apparently, my family was watching too. Because 3 days later, that message arrived. Darling, we need to talk. We're waiting for you. I looked back at the skyline from my balcony. The same city that once felt so lonely now felt like proof. Proof that I had survived. Proof that I had built something real. Without their help. Without their support. Without their love. So the question wasn't whether I would go see them. The real question was something much deeper. Why did they suddenly want to see me now? Guilt? Regret? Or something else entirely? I picked up my phone, typed a short reply. I'll come tomorrow. Then I put the phone down. Because tomorrow, I wasn't just visiting my parents. I was walking back into the past. And this time, I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. But what my parents didn't know was this: I wasn't coming alone. I was bringing something with me, something they had never seen before, something that would change everything, and when they finally opened the door, they would realize something very important. The daughter they ignored years ago was not the same woman standing on their doorstep now. The next morning arrived with a strange kind of silence. Not the peaceful kind, the heavy kind. The kind that sits on your chest when you know you're about to face something from your past that never really healed. I woke up earlier than usual. Sunlight was spilling through the giant windows of my penthouse, painting the living room with warm golden light. New York was already alive outside, taxis honking, people rushing to work, the distant hum of the city beginning another busy day. But inside my apartment, everything felt still. I stood there for a moment, staring at the skyline. 3 years ago, I had watched this same city from a tiny basement apartment with peeling paint and a leaking ceiling. Now I owned one of the most expensive views in Manhattan. Life had changed, but some wounds never really disappear. I walked into my bedroom and opened the closet. Designer suits, elegant dresses, expensive heels. Things I once believed were meant for other people. People who had supportive families. People who had someone cheering for them. But today wasn't about impressing anyone. Today was about closure. I chose a simple black outfit. Clean, professional. Calm, no flashy jewelry. No dramatic makeup. Just me. Before leaving, I grabbed one thing from my desk drawer. A small flash drive. I turned it in my fingers for a moment. Inside it were things my parents had never expected me to keep. Proof, memories. Things people said when they thought I was too young to understand. I slipped it into my pocket, just in case. The drive to my parents' house took 40 minutes. The entire time, my stomach twisted into knots. Every street I passed felt familiar. Every corner carried a memory. The coffee shop where I used to work part-time in high school. The park where my sister once pushed me off the swing because I was annoying. The grocery store where my mom once forgot to pick me up after my shift. I shook the thoughts away. Today wasn't about reliving every painful memory. But the past has a funny way of walking beside you when you return home. Then finally, I saw it. The house. The same white 2-story house with blue shutters. The same front yard. The same old maple tree where my dad used to hang Christmas lights every winter. For a moment, I just sat in the car, looking at it, because even after everything, a small part of me still remembered this place as home. Then the front door opened. My mother stepped outside. And suddenly that feeling disappeared. She looked exactly the same. Perfect hair. Perfect clothes. Perfect smile. The kind of smile she used whenever guests were around. Not the kind she used with me growing up. Her eyes widened when she saw my car. A sleek black luxury sedan. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. I noticed. Of course I did. I stepped out of the car. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she walked toward me quickly and wrapped her arms around me. Oh my God, Annie. Look at you, her voice sounded overly excited, almost theatrical. I missed you so much. I stood there stiffly while she hugged me, because the last time she hugged me like that, I was probably 10 years old. When she pulled back, her eyes scanned me from head to toe. The clothes, the watch, the car behind me. The quiet calculation behind her eyes didn't go unnoticed. Well, she laughed lightly. Someone's doing very well for herself. Before I could answer, another voice came from the doorway. Is that really her? My father? He stepped outside slowly, hands in his pockets, looking at me the way someone studies a stranger they've heard rumors about. For years, my father barely spoke more than a few sentences to me at a time. Now he was staring like I had become some kind of mystery. "Hi, Dad," I said calmly. He nodded once. "You look successful. Not proud, not happy, just observant." Then suddenly a third voice appeared. Oh wow, it actually is her. My sister. Lena walked out holding her phone in one hand. Still the same as always. Beautiful, confident, and somehow always standing at the center of attention. She looked at my car and let out a small whistle. Okay, wow, that's a serious upgrade from your old Honda. I smiled politely. You remember that? She shrugged. Hard to forget. It used to make that weird engine noise. For a moment, the four of us stood there awkwardly in the driveway, like actors trying to remember their lines in a scene that had never been rehearsed. Finally, my mom clapped her hands together. Well, we're not going to stand outside all day. Come in, sweetheart. Sweetheart. Another word I hadn't heard from her in years. The moment I stepped inside the house, the memories hit me like a wave. The same wooden staircase, the same family photos on the wall. Except one thing stood out immediately. Most of the pictures were of Lena. Her birthday parties, her dance competitions, her prom night, her college acceptance. I spotted exactly one photo of me, my 8th grade school picture, tucked near the bottom of the wall, small, almost hidden. Mom noticed where I was looking. Oh goodness, we really need to update these photos, she said quickly. But we both knew that wasn't the real reason. We sat down in the living room. My mom brought coffee. My dad sat in his usual chair. Lena leaned against the couch scrolling through her phone. For a moment nobody spoke. Then finally my mom cleared her throat. So, Annie, she leaned forward slightly. We saw your Instagram. There it was, the real reason for the invitation. Dad crossed his arms. That penthouse, is it real? I almost laughed. Yes. Silence. Lena looked up from her phone. Like, actually yours. Yes. Another silence. Then something interesting happened. Their attitudes shifted. Just slightly, but enough for me to notice. Suddenly, my father leaned forward with more interest. My mom smiled a little wider. Lena put her phone down. Now they wanted details. How big is it? Mom asked. How much did it cost? Lena added. What exactly do you do now? Dad asked. Question after question. Rapid, curious, excited. And I realized something in that moment. They weren't talking to their daughter. They were talking to someone they had just discovered was valuable. I answered calmly. Explained my company, the clients, the growth, but I kept everything simple. Because the more they listened, the more amazed they looked. And the more uncomfortable I felt, finally my mom sighed dramatically. You know, we always believed you would do something great. That sentence hung in the air like a bad joke, because we all knew it wasn't true. Then my father said something that made the entire room go quiet. Well, since you're doing so well now, he leaned back in his chair. We were actually hoping you might help the family with something. There it was, The real reason I had been invited back. Not love, not regret, not reconciliation, money. I slowly reached into my pocket and touched the flash drive, because suddenly this conversation had become far more interesting, and my family had no idea what was about to happen next. The moment my father said the word help, the air inside the living room changed. It was subtle, but I felt it. The kind of shift you notice when a conversation stops being about family and starts being about opportunity. For them, not for me. I leaned back slightly on the couch and watched their faces carefully. My mom folded her hands together on her lap. My father cleared his throat. Lena leaned forward with a sudden interest she hadn't shown in years. That alone told me everything. My father finally spoke. Well, the thing is, he rubbed his hands together slowly. We've been dealing with some financial pressure lately. I didn't respond. I just waited, because I had learned something important over the years. When people want something from you, silence makes them reveal more. And sure enough, my mom jumped in quickly. It's not that we're struggling or anything, she said quickly. But the house needs repairs, and your father's business hasn't been doing as well recently. Dad nodded. Market changes. Lena sighed dramatically. And my student loans are insane. 3 different problems, all presented at once, like a menu. Then my mom looked directly at me. But when we saw your success online, she smiled warmly. We realized how proud we are of you. That sentence felt like a blade wrapped in velvet. Because suddenly, the daughter they barely noticed had become their solution. I kept my voice calm. So what exactly are you asking? Dad leaned forward. Well, nothing crazy. That's always how big requests begin. We were thinking maybe you could help us refinance the house. Lena quickly added, and maybe help me clear my student loans. My mom gently touched my hand. Just temporarily, sweetheart, until things stabilize. I looked at each of them. Slowly, one by one. The room felt strangely quiet. And the funny thing was, not one of them had asked me how I was. Not one question about my life, my struggles, my journey. Only numbers, money possibilities. I took a small breath, then asked a simple question. Do you remember my graduation? The reaction was immediate. My mom blinked. Dad shifted in his chair. Lena looked confused. Of course we do, my mother said quickly. But the hesitation in her voice betrayed her. I tilted my head slightly. Which part? Silence. My father looked at my mother. My mother looked at Lena. Lena stared at the floor. And suddenly the room felt smaller. Exactly, I said quietly. No anger, no shouting, just the truth. My mother forced a laugh. Oh honey, that was years ago. Why bring that up now? Because it mattered. Because that was the day everything changed. But I didn't say that. Instead, I asked another question. Do you remember what you told me that morning my mom frowned? No. I slowly reached into my pocket and placed the small flash drive on the coffee table. The tiny object suddenly became the center of the room. My father looked at it. What's that? I leaned forward slightly. Memories. My sister laughed. Okay, that sounded dramatic. But I wasn't joking. You see, I continued calmly. When people spend years being ignored, they start noticing things. My mother's smile faded. What are you talking about? I tapped the flash drive gently. For years I recorded conversations. Dad's eyes narrowed. What conversations? I met his gaze. Family ones. The silence that followed was heavy. Lena sat up straighter. Mom looked suddenly nervous, and my father's jaw tightened. But again, I didn't say that out loud. Instead, I answered honestly, because someday I knew we'd have this conversation. The streetlight above the driveway flickered slightly. Lena stepped forward now, her voice sharp. "This is insane. You're acting like we abused you or something." I looked at her calmly. "Did you?" She scoffed. "Of course not." For a moment nobody spoke. Then my father sighed. "Look, this has gotten out of hand." He stepped off the porch and walked toward us. "You've done well for yourself. That's great." His tone shifted into something smoother now. Businesslike, but holding on to old resentment won't help anyone. I raised an eyebrow slightly. "Old resentment?" He nodded. "You're successful now. Isn't that what matters?" There it was. The classic family rewrite. Pain becomes resentment. Neglect becomes misunderstanding. And suddenly the past disappears. But something inside me felt strangely calm, because I wasn't here to argue. I was here to see the truth. And the truth was standing right in front of me. "Dad," I said quietly, "do you remember the summer I was 17? He frowned. "What about it?" I tilted my head slightly. "The night you and Mom had that big argument in the kitchen." My mother stiffened instantly. Dad looked confused. "That was a long time ago." "Yes," I said. "But some memories stick." Lena rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, are we really doing childhood flashbacks now?" But I wasn't looking at her. I was watching my parents, because their reactions were very different. My mother looked nervous. My father looked irritated, which meant one thing. They remembered. "You said something interesting that night," I continued. Dad frowned deeper. "I said a lot of things." "Yes." I nodded slowly. But one line stood out. I took a small step closer. "You said Lena was the only child who would ever make you proud." Lena smirked. "Well, you did prove him wrong." But I ignored her again, because the next part mattered more. And then Mom said something. My mother's face went pale. "Annie, stop." But it was too late. Because once a truth starts coming out, it rarely stops halfway. "You told Dad he couldn't blame me," I continued. "You said I was never meant to be the golden child." Lena laughed quietly. Wow, dramatic. But my mom wasn't laughing. Not even close. I looked directly at her now. "Do you remember what you said next?" Her lips trembled slightly. No, but she was lying. I could see it. "You said," I paused for a second, "that Lena had always been the investment." My father's expression darkened. "What are you getting at?" I crossed my arms calmly. "I'm getting at something very simple." I looked between the three of them. For years, everything in this family revolved around Lena. Private schools, dance competitions, expensive tutoring, new cars. Family vacations built around her schedule. Meanwhile, I worked part-time jobs at 16 just to buy my own laptop. And nobody ever questioned why. Lena shrugged. So nothing," I said calmly. "I just find it interesting." She frowned. "Interesting how?" I took a breath. Then finally said the thing that had been sitting quietly in my mind since I arrived. "Interesting that the investment never paid off." The driveway went silent. Lena's expression changed instantly. "What's that supposed to mean?" I tilted my head slightly. "It means Dad's business didn't start failing recently." My father froze. My mom's eyes widened. Lena looked confused. "It started failing 5 years ago," I continued. "And most of the money that disappeared," I looked directly at my sister, "went into Lena's projects." The silence that followed felt heavy. Lena's voice rose immediately. "That's not true." My father spoke sharply. "Enough." But the panic in his voice betrayed him. Because there was something they didn't know, something they hadn't realized yet. While they were busy watching my Instagram, I had been quietly learning things too. Financial things, business things, investment things, and somewhere along the way, I had looked into my father's company, not out of revenge, just curiosity. But curiosity can uncover a lot of truth. And the truth was this: the family investment had been a disaster. Failed ventures, bad decisions, loans, debt, which explained something important: the sudden message, the sudden invitation, the sudden worth. My mother's voice trembled. "Annie, where did you hear that?" I met her eyes. I didn't hear it. I paused. I saw it. My father's face hardened. "You went digging into my finances." "No," I said calmly. "I went digging into public records." And unfortunately for him, businesses leave a lot of public records. Lino looked between us. "What are you talking about?" Nobody answered her. Because suddenly, the conversation had shifted into dangerous territory. I took one last step back toward my car. I didn't come here to embarrass anyone. Again, true. But now I understand something. My father's voice was low. "And what's that?" I opened my car door slowly, then looked back at them. "You didn't invite me here because you love me." Their faces stayed silent. "You invited me here because you're running out of options." My mother whispered softly, "That's not true." But even she didn't sound convinced. I got into the driver's seat, then paused, because there was one more thing they needed to hear. One truth that had taken me years to understand. I looked at them through the open car window and said quietly, "You spent 20 years investing in the wrong child." Then I started the engine and drove away, leaving 3 stunned faces standing in the driveway behind me. But what they didn't know yet was that the story was about to take an even bigger turn. Because the next morning, someone unexpected would contact me. Someone who knew a secret about my family that would change everything. The city looked different that night. When I drove back into Manhattan, the skyline shimmered like 1,000 quiet reminders of how far I had come. The streets were still alive, taxis rushing past, people laughing outside restaurants, neon lights reflecting off wet pavement after a light rain. Normally, the energy of the city made me feel powerful. But that night, I felt something else. Heavy, not regret, just exhaustion. Family conversations have a way of draining you in ways nothing else can. Even when you walk away, I parked in the underground garage beneath my building and took the elevator up to the penthouse. The quiet hum of the elevator felt almost peaceful after everything that had happened. When the doors opened, the soft lighting of my apartment welcomed me home. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the endless lights of New York. For a moment, I simply stood there, breathing, letting the silence settle around me. No accusations, no tension, no memories chasing me down hallways. Just calm. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and leaned against the counter. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced down, expecting another message from my mother. Instead, it was a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. Unknown numbers usually go straight to voicemail, but something about the moment made me hesitate. After 2 rings, I answered. "Hello." There was a short pause. Then a woman's voice spoke. "Is this Annie Harper?" "Yes." Another pause. "My name is Margaret Collins." The name meant nothing to me, but the next sentence changed everything. "I used to work for your father." I straightened instantly. "What?" Her voice remained calm, almost careful. "I was his financial assistant for 12 years. 12 years. That meant she had been there during most of my childhood." And suddenly, the conversation in the driveway replayed in my mind. Public records. Debt. Bad investments. I'm sorry for calling this late, Margaret continued. But after seeing your post online and hearing something today, I thought you deserved to know the truth. A strange tension crept into my chest. What truth? Her answer came slowly. The truth about your family's finances. I walked toward the living room windows, staring out over the glowing city. Go on. She sighed quietly. I left your father's company 2 years ago. Why? Another pause. Because I realized something was very wrong. Something cold slid down my spine. What do you mean? Her voice dropped lower now. Your father didn't lose money because of bad business decisions. I felt my fingers tighten around the phone. Then why did he lose it? Her answer came like a quiet bomb. Because someone inside the family was draining the company. For a moment, I thought I misheard her. Draining it. Bias. How? Fake investments. Personal expenses disguised as business projects. Large transfers that disappeared into private accounts. The room suddenly felt smaller. Who? Margaret hesitated. I can't say that over the phone. My heart started beating faster. But I can tell you this. Her voice became very serious. The person responsible wasn't your father. Silence filled the penthouse. My mind immediately jumped to the only other person heavily involved in those investments. Lena. But I didn't say it out loud. Instead, I asked carefully, why are you telling me this? Margaret answered immediately. Because the situation is about to explode. Explode how? Your father's company is being investigated. My stomach dropped slightly. Investigated. Yes. By who? Federal auditors. The city lights outside suddenly looked different. Sharper. Colder. What does that have to do with me? I asked quietly. Margaret's answer made my heart sink. Because your name is connected to the company now. I froze. What? When your father recently tried to restructure his finances, he listed you as a potential financial partner. My voice hardened instantly. I never agreed to that. I know. But on paper, it makes it look like you're involved. Anger sparked in my chest. So that was the real reason for the invitation. Not just money. Protection. Margaret, I said carefully. Who exactly has been draining the company? She took a deep breath. I can show you. Show me. Lies. I kept copies of certain documents before I left. My heart pounded harder. What kind of documents? Bank transfers. Internal memos. Investment records. She paused. And the name attached to almost all of them. I closed my eyes briefly. I already knew the answer, but hearing it would make it real. Whose name? I asked it. Margaret's voice was quiet. Your sister's. The words hung in the air like thunder after lightning. Lena. Suddenly, the driveway conversation made much more sense. Her defensiveness, my father's panic. My mother's fear, they hadn't just invited me back because I was successful. They invited me because the family's golden child had quietly destroyed everything. I opened my eyes and stared out at the city again. What do you want from me? I asked. Margaret answered gently. Nothing. But I think you deserve the truth before the investigation begins. And when does that happen? Her answer came softly. Soon. How soon? Possibly within weeks. I rubbed my forehead slowly. So my father's company is collapsing. My sister might be responsible. And somehow I'm connected to it, Elias. That's a mess. A very big one. We stayed silent for a moment. Then Margaret said something unexpected. There's something else you should know. My chest tightened again. What? The investigators already contacted your father once. When? This week. That explained the panic, the sudden family reunion, the desperate request for help. They weren't just asking for money. They were looking for a lifeline. "And Lena?" I asked quietly. Margaret's voice carried a hint of sadness now. "She's in much deeper trouble than she realizes." "How deep?" Margaret hesitated, then answered honestly. "If the investigation proves what I think it will," she paused, "your sister could face serious charges." I slowly lowered myself onto the couch. My mind was spinning now. Not because I wanted revenge, but because this situation had suddenly become much bigger than family drama. This was legal, financial, dangerous. "Margaret," I asked carefully, "why tell me instead of the authorities?" Her answer surprised me. "I already did." A chill ran through me. "But they're still gathering evidence. And the documents you have, they're part of that evidence." Another silence filled the room. Then she said something that made my heart sink. "There's a good chance the investigators will contact you soon." I exhaled slowly. "Fantastic." Margaret spoke gently now. "I'm sorry to bring this to you." "You didn't create the problem," I said quietly. "No," she replied. "But you might be the only person who can survive it." After we hung up, I sat in silence for a long time, looking out at the city, thinking about my parents, my sister, everything that had just been revealed, because suddenly the story had shifted. This wasn't about childhood resentment anymore. It wasn't even about family favoritism. It was about something much darker. Secrets, money, betrayal, and deep down, I knew something terrifying. If the investigation started digging, the truth about my family might destroy all of them. But one question kept echoing in my mind. One question I couldn't ignore. If Lena had really been draining the company for years, then what exactly had she been spending all that money on? And the answer to that question was about to change everything again. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Not because of an alarm, because my mind refused to stay quiet. Margaret's words kept replaying in my head like a broken recording. "Your sister could face serious charges." I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the sunrise pouring through the massive windows of the penthouse. The city was slowly waking up, traffic starting to hum, distant sirens echoing through the streets, early joggers moving through the park below. Normally mornings like this made me feel proud of everything I had built. But today felt different. Because for the first time in years, my family's chaos had found its way back into my life. And it was about to get worse. Around 9:30 a.m., my phone rang again. This time the number wasn't unknown. It was my mother. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before answering. "Hello." Her voice sounded different, panicked. "Annie, something's happening." I leaned back against the couch. "What kind of something?" There was noise in the background. Voices. Movement. Then she whispered quickly. "People are here." My stomach tightened. "What people?" Her voice dropped even lower. "Investigators." For a moment, the entire room went silent around me. Margaret had said it might happen soon.